Well, and you bring up it like when we've talked a ton about growth, right? And how we grow people inside of our organizations. What happens when we need to go outside and we need to source talent?
So, are we kind of like talking a little bit about like recruiting or?
Okay, so as a sales leader, right, I need to go out and recruit, right? When we're growing, we're going to add to the team.
Yeah.
That's typically what we hear is one of the hardest things is going and finding good people that can execute.
And that is absolutely true. And I'm going to layer on top of that.
Okay.
I wrote a blog a couple of months ago about the dangers of dotted line responsibilities. And in sales, it's an absolute axe right to the carotid artery. And here's what I mean. Like oftentimes when there are sales positions on the roster that are empty and they need to be filled. Well,
Sure.
Well, who gets that responsibility?
It's typically the sales leader.
Right. It's sales leaders, right?
It's fall in their
It's
lap.
going to fall in their lap to go figure that one out. And so, what is their appetite to hire the first, person that can fog a mirror?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And oftentimes that's really, really where it falls down. And so I'll lean back into that operational framework, right? Talent acquisition,
Sure.
right, should always be on the radar. So when we get into these spots and we know that there's going to be some level of turnover, we understand who we want, why we want them, what the hallmarks of that individual are. So, we're not so desperate when the need comes for us to hire somebody.
Yeah. And then, one of the things that we hear leaders say quite often is like, well, they interviewed great.
Oh, geez.
They had a great resume, ton of experience.
Ask all the right questions.
They ask all the right questions.
Love that one.
But, we get 6, 8, 10 months into this and they're not producing at the level that they really were on paper.
And you know what? It's, you're absolutely right. It's 8, 10, 12 months, right? I always say that, when people enter an organization, they're going to operate on pure adrenaline. Right? Generally speaking, they want to do a really good job, right? They want to show that they're worth every penny, you're paying them and all of that stuff. But, as time rolls on, comfort zones creep back into their lives. That adrenaline rush wears off, right? And we start to really see the true person. The question I start to have for sales leaders is, who's getting smoked in that interview?
Who's selling who?
Who's selling who, right? So I think that's one of my favorite Sandler rules. Somebody is always getting smoked in the interview, right? And don't let it be you from a sales leadership standpoint. So how do sales leaders navigate that one, Rob?
So one, I think we all fall into, and I think the term, maybe you can correct me, is it affiliation? Like sometimes if someone's pushed in our direction and we have a direct kind of affiliation with them, maybe it was a colleague or a friend.
I don't know if it's affiliation. I've heard the term bias before.
Yeah.
Right. We have these biases, right?
Right. And we start to make assumptions about the person. They came from this part of the neck of our woods.
Oh yeah, Rob knows that guy.
We got this person that we're connected with, so they must be a good
Yeah, we know that guy from Cub Scouts. Our kids play together, right?
Right. And we start to make these biases, right? And we start to make these assumptions that they're going to be able to fulfill the role. And then it comes to fruition 6, 8, 10 months. They really can't. And so how can we take subjective data that we're assuming and make it objective? And so like, I think that's hard to do when we're emotionally involved because we want to hire this person. We want to see them.
Absolutely.
But like, what if we could actually have a tool that we could lean on that would essentially almost let us take it for a test drive? Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses? Where are the things that maybe I'm not seeing?
Yeah. So what you're not suggesting, some sort of
evaluation, screening tool, like
diagnostic or right?
Something's going to pull the emotion out.
Quantitative evaluation.
And so, we use these third-party tools to get our sales leaders smart before they bring somebody on, before they invest. The most important thing is time, right? Because how much time is that sales leader going to take to onboard that person, teach them the systems and processes, right? It's going to suck the time out of that leader, that they're not channeling energy into other people. It's going to show us where the strengths, weaknesses are. We can start to highlight the strengths, combat the weaknesses, see even how open this person is to coaching and training.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was in a conversation with some colleagues about 2 weeks ago, and we were having great conversations on the behavioral assessments. And I know Sandler, we have a number of those in our toolbox. Depending on the situation of the company, we can pull the right one out at the right time. But we were talking about what the right markers were inside of there, right? And some of these assessments are crazy cool, right? Some don't necessarily tell you if they'll sell or not, but one of the some of the hallmarks that we typically look at: ambition and drive. Do they have a motor? What's that motor look like? Are they money motivated or not? I mean, there's another one. And quite frankly, just because some people aren't necessarily over the top money motivated doesn't mean they won't make good salespeople. You just have to understand their motivation.
That's right.
Sometimes their motivation isn't to go grab as much money. Sometimes the motivation is a team victory and not an individual victory. Or a stroke. Yeah. An attaboy.
You did a good job.
An attaboy, right? So, but nonetheless, the motor has to be there, right? It's ambition and drive. We look also at things like, you mentioned coachability, right? How trainable are they? Are they trainable? Like, can they take a concept and operationalize a concept? Some people aren't growth minded, and that's a marker. The other thing that we came up with was self-awareness. Like, think about self-awareness. I mean, as a manager, a sales leader, whatever, right? And you've got to manage a salesperson. How in the world are they going to listen to you when they can't even figure out their own tendencies or come to terms with their own tendencies? So self-awareness would be another one of those key markers. I don't know about for you, but here's another one of my markers. The other marker is their need for approval. Some people have a high need for approval. Some people have a low need for approval. Now, somebody with a high need for approval, let's say, that's probably the type of person who's probably more likely to pitch features and benefits. They want you to like them. They're willing to do anything, say anything to get you to like them. And we know in sales, it's as much about respect as it is getting to like.
100%.
Somebody with a low need for approval is not really afraid of having tough conversations, right? And at the end of the day, we're protecting profit for our organization, and sometimes you have to have tough conversations to protect that profit. So Rob, you were mentioning about, using assessments to kind of look under the hood and kind of understand what the interview doesn't tell us and what the resume doesn't tell us. Talk about, a medium to small size business where they don't necessarily have a robust HR department. How does Sandler kind of weave in assessment process, particularly on the pre-hire?
Yeah. So the organizations that execute this really well, they put it at the tip of the spear. So meaning, candidate goes on, fills out an application online, however that, process is done internally, right? And now that sales leader, right, has a stack of resumes they have to sift through.
Yep.
And, so what are they looking for? They're looking for background. They're looking for tenure. How long did they stay somewhere? What's their education?
Yeah.
Right. It's all the things on the resume that they're looking for. Well, like if you have 100 applications, it's a lot of time. We got to go through that. So what if there was a way that we could expedite that? What if there was a way that every applicant took the assessment, right? And then that assessment basically said, hey, Rick, this is somebody you should talk to. Like on paper, now it's not objective, right? Or it's not subjective.
Right.
It's objective. So it says this person doesn't have need for approval. They will take responsibility. They have, what did you call it?
The motor, right?
They have the motor.
The motor.
Ambition and drive.
Ambition and drive.
Right? To actually do the job. Right? And that 100 candidates turned into 40. Right? Now it's something a little bit more palatable. Now I can take those and rank and file them, right? Based on experience, and the objective data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right now, I'm channeling my energy the right way, and I'm spending time with people that, at least on paper, look good.
Yeah, and I often say that, like, the moment we talk to somebody, we start to fall in love.
That's right.
Right? It's right.
It's that bias.
Confirmation. I think they call it confirmation bias. We start to fall in love. A lot of that love comes from the need for us to fill a position because we have this dotted line responsibility hanging over us. We start to fall in love. And so, sometimes we have to resist the urge to fall in love, and hey, let's call it for what it is. Let's, let's screen the resumes.
Mhm.
And take it for what it's worth. Let's peel out the ones we feel align with, the right, model, the right, objectives, the right sales culture, right? Let's peel those out. And then, all right, now let's assess,
Mhm.
right? What can we glean from assessments? Outside of, like, what's the motor look like? What's the need for approval look like? What's the, self-awareness? What else with the assessment would help, a sales leader?
So one, I think, whether it's the bias that whatever bias we're putting on it, these assessments are actually pretty cool in the fact they'll give you interview questions based on strengths and weaknesses.
Really?
They'll take the homework out.
Oh my goodness.
Right? So they'll have a list of 20, 25 questions, right? That we can kind of pepper the candidate, and we're looking for the response. Now, the good sales leaders, right, are doing a pre-call plan ahead of that. They're reviewing those questions and really kind of reflecting, how the response, what am I really looking for from this question, from the way that I'm asking it.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. So, right, we can screen it. We can look for some of the competencies that are really important to us. We can, drive the right questions during the interview, and let's pretend we hire those people. Where does the assessment come in there?
So the screening tool itself is really for the sales leaders guys only. Like, it's not something I put in front of my new hire.
Right.
But we can upgrade that to what we call full-blown evaluation. And it's a more detailed report. But it also, like, this is something where we're going to sit with that new hire and kind of walk through the results. And what we're trying to do is heighten the self-awareness of that person.
Yeah.
You got some people, when you sit down and you give those, and they're like, yep, that is me to a T.
Yeah.
And then you've got some people that, like, kind of go through those. I'm like, you know what? I'm not quite sure that's right. And what we've discovered is once they spend a little bit more time and they start to sit with it and they reflect a little bit, most of them come back and go, you know what? That thing was pretty spot on.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I've got this theory about that, right? There's some people who would just say, this assessment doesn't reflect who I am, and or more so in the moment of, it's the sales leader says, oh, this isn't this guy. I interviewed him, and oh, he's a rock star. He's a rock star, right? Yeah, no, and so you get that pushback, and more often than not, there's one of two things going on, right? Sometimes it's just the pure adrenaline of the moment. We talked about that earlier. People are willing to say anything, do anything, prove how cool they are. They can do it in the moment, but can they do it over a sustained period of time? So oftentimes I say, just wait, give it 8 to 12 months, and they'll show their true stripes. The other thing that can come into play if somebody has low self-awareness, right? They're more likely to kind of refute the findings.
Arm wrestle it.
Yeah, arm wrestle it for sure. Absolutely.
Well, and I don't know, in the 20 years that we've been assessing, I've had one time out of thousands of assessments where somebody went against the test and hired them.
And what happened?
One time it worked.
They worked out, yeah.
One time.
So I'll give you one more. I'll give you one more scenario. I was working with a sales leader, very industrialized organization, and they were looking for a new sales manager, right? So we're chatting about, what their goal was on this one, and his goal was, hey, I just need somebody who can coach the team. I don't need a rock star. I need somebody who can coach the team long enough for me to get my legs underneath me and figure out how we're going to navigate this sales operation long term. I said, okay. He goes, well, what do you think about this guy? I got him from a recruiter, and the recruiter said he was a rock star. I said, well, based on what? He says, well, it's the assessment, and so, okay. And it wasn't necessarily a behavioral based. It was more personality based. Can't miss. Well, why do you think the recruiter says he's a rock star?
Might have an emotional buying reason.
Yeah, right. He might have a little skin in the game on that one.
Right.
So here's what happened. So I did the assessment on him, and I said, well, he's not a rock star, but he has coaching ability. This leader has coaching ability. But here's the thing. Either one of you guys are going to get sick of each other. Within 18 months, you're probably going to fire him. Right? No, that was kind of cavalier, and I probably shouldn't have said that, right? But I just didn't feel good about it. There was nothing compelling about this individual that told me that he was going to work long-term, right? Adrenaline was going to take him through much of the engagement. So I'm having breakfast at approximately 19 months out, and I'm having a touch breakfast with the CEO, and he looks at me and he says, Rick, he goes, you don't know this, but you just worked your way into my circle of trust. And I don't know what he's going to tell me after this. I don't know. I don't know what's going to go on. So I said, well, so what's going on? He says, well, the sales manager, we hired. He goes, I think we're going to need to fire him. And I said to him, I said, what do you mean we? I tried to fire him before you hired him, right? And so, and he said to me, he goes, Rick, he goes, you're right, but we did it for the right reason too, right? And sometimes we have to understand what the reasons are for hiring people when we apply these assessments as well.
That's right.